welcome Phil up as he brings his message, Face Your Fear. Thanks, guys.
Well, we did know about that fear. Tony, can you bring the peacock out, please? Oh, dear. Shouldn't have let me know that, JP. Face your fear. Happy Thanksgiving weekend for you Americans in the house. I do like a Thanksgiving weekend dinner. Although, what's that stuff you do with the marshmallow on the sweet potatoes with marshmallow on the top? There's something very wrong, but very right about that. I'm not sure how I feel about it. And turkeys, obviously turkey. Gotta have turkey. Yeah. Always turkey. Even vegans eat turkey on Thanksgiving, apparently. But fun, weird fact for you. Fear of turkeys is called, I'm going to butcher these, by the way, Meleagrisphobia. Meleagrisphobia, fear of turkey. Now, let's be honest, who wouldn't fear a turkey? Look at it. They're incredibly dangerous. They're razor-sharp teeth. Fear of they are a bit weird looking, but I'm not scared of turkey. Anyone scared of turkeys? You are scared of turkey because they're too peacock-like. Yeah, any poultry. Chickens. Quail. What about a robin, redbreast? Is that? That's all right. Oh dear. I've got some weird ones actually for you to talk about. This one is anatidaephobia. Can anyone guess what this? In fact, I think you might know what this means. And you'll never guess. It's so niche, it's ridiculous. It is a fear of ducks watching you. Not a fear of ducks, but a fear of ducks watching you, like with the beady eye. It is weird. It's like they're dead inside behind the eyes, isn't it? I think that's what it is. But any weird? Let's be honest. He's revealed one. Any other weird fears? Come on, you can be. It's family here. Any weird? What's your weird fear? Cows and tea bags. Separately, not at the same time. Not like a milky cup of tea doesn't scare you. Any other weird ones? Oh, you're getting pointed. You're volunteered. Water touching your face. Shower. So you have to bath or shower with a thing down. Can't go swimming. Oh, you're going to hate my message today. Right. My weird ones, some of you know my weird ones, but I've actually adapted them over years where I've grown or where I've actually realised they weren't quite what I thought. But I've got a mix of myoxophobia and trypophobia. So myoxophobia is a fear of slime, but I don't have a fear of slime. And trypophobia is aversion to clusters of things. And I don't really have a fear of clusters of things. But when you put them together, and I don't think there's an actual name, but it'd be something like myoxophobia, trypophobia or something. But it's when there's slimy clusters of things, honestly, it weirds me out. And so one example of that is like melon seeds that are together, clumped together. Individually, that's not scary or weird, but clumped together and freaks me out. It's like the bottom of boats, that sort of look, or clusters of like sea animals that sort of bunch together that are slimy when the sea goes back out. It weirds me out. I don't like it. But it's not them two independent things. It's a combination of the two, unlike your cows and tea bags example over there. And so another one of mine that I'm going to psychoanalyze myself here, but I used to think I was scared of, and I've said it from the front, that I'm scared of large wild animals. That I'm scared of large wild animals, which is obviously, everyone knows, agoraphoobia. Like even cows, I don't like small wild animals that I can kick, not scared of them at all. Anything bigger than me, probably, is what I'm scared of, so like a silverback and up. Like, I could take a chimp, but no, I couldn't. But it's not really, so this isn't what I'm scared of. Because I love watching, I watched a video actually just the other day on YouTube of the longest bear fight caught on camera, and it had two big brown bears fighting somewhere, I can't remember where it was, in the high street somewhere. But they went to town for like ages. They usually fight for only, and I love watching big powerful animals fight. I'm not bothered about that, so I'm not actually scared of the animal. They're behind a fence, not really bothered about them. I'm not scared of them. Big dogs in the street, not really bothered. But I always thought I was, but it wasn't that I was scared of. What I'm actually really uneasy about, or puts me on edge, is interactions with wild animals and humans. That's what I don't like. That's what makes me like on edge. Some of you weirdos like swim with sharks and things, and that's cool. But me, I'm like, that makes me feel very uneasy, very anxious, very fearful. And why? Because it's my actual real fear is not animals. It's actually traumatophobia, which is actually seeing people get hurt. And that's where my fear comes from. It's actually seeing, so I hate like some videos pop up in Facebook or YouTube of like, man enters lion cage and gets mauled to death. And it starts playing before I'm like, and like, honestly, it really, or I see someone attack, I just hate it, someone getting hurt. And I've really psychoanalyzed myself this week and dove deep into thinking about what actually makes me tick. And I'm specifically, I think, repulsed by seeing innocent people seriously hurt. That's the thing that sort of my brain doesn't like to handle. You know, when there's no chance of fighting back. That's why the wild animal against a human I don't like, because it's like the human has no chance against a lion. So it's that sort of injustice, of unfairness of the fight that actually makes me uneasy. It's a bit weird, whether that's like an animal or a gang of people fighting one person or attacking one person. It's that moves in me that's both, it's weird, it's an equal mix of anger and fear at the same time. Like, I want to do something about that, but I'm scared to because of I wouldn't want to fight the lion off. I wouldn't want to just grab do a David and beat the lion around the head. That's something that's a soft spot for me. It's maybe we're all scared of lions that are trying to eat us, but my point is, like, it's a very specific fear. Like, I love cage fighting. I love UFC. I love guys punching out of each other. I love it until one's knocked out, until they go on the ground. And UFC rules is you've still got to keep hitting them because they have to not defend themselves. So you can be out clean cold and you can still punch them on the... And that point, I'm like, I'm out. I'm tapping out for them. I hate seeing people hurt who can't defend themselves. And so it's a mix of outrage, of injustice and unfairness, and a fear of not being able to control the situation, and a major injury happening. I've got all these things going on, a mixture of anger and fear all at once. You see, my point is we all have really specific fears. That's my point. We all have these very tailored, specific fears that no one else worries about, doesn't even go on their radar, but to us, it could be overwhelming. And usually we push them down and build our lives around to avoid them, because who wouldn't? But we all have very specific things we fear, or we're uneasy about, or we avoid. Maybe we wouldn't use the word fear, perhaps. But our life can be full of very tangible things we can really feel, or frequent fears that actually cripple us, even if you're not aware of it. There might be lots of things that cripple that you're unaware of in the background. And so I want us to acknowledge today that fear is a universal experience. Even I'm someone up the end that doesn't fear many things, if I'm honest. But maybe you're up the other end of the spectrum, you live in constant fear about lots of things. But we all, it's a universal thing, this fear that we experience, and it's natural for us to want to avoid it where it does rear its head. And last week, if you were here, Steph talked about Fight Club and that we're called to fight. I'm really talking about a spiritual fight, but we're called to fight. And let's be honest, many of you in the room would have been in fights. Being in an actual fight can be quite scary, and so most of us avoid it if we can. Some people don't. Some people like a good scrap. But most of us avoid it if we can. But to follow on from what Steph spoke about, I'd say this, that fear isn't something we should avoid. It's something we must face. It's not something that we should avoid. It's something that we should actually face. When you think about your life and my life, perhaps that's what we've done all the time, is try to avoid fear, is to try and run away from fear, is to hide from fear. Some of us will fight back, some of us will fight or flight, or play dead. I've never got the play dead thing. But fear isn't something we should avoid, it's something we must face. And I think when we look at Scripture, in the Old Testament particularly, but all the way through the New as well, it encourages us to do that, even though it's completely opposite of what we naturally in our flesh want to do. And when you look at the Israelites in Numbers 21, we'll get there in a minute, but they're wandering the wilderness. Most of you know the story. They've just come out of Israel, but they're complaining to Moses, poor bloke. I do feel for Moses sometimes. But they're also rebelling against God at the same time. And it says in Scripture that God allowed venomous snakes to enter the camp. It's like sometimes we think God would never do that. He's like, I'm going to teach you. You flipping moan at me. I'm going to throw some venomous snakes in. Parents, don't do that with your children. It's frowned upon. But it actually caused widespread fear and death. And the people begged for deliverance. But instead of removing the snakes, God commanded Moses to make a bronze snake and place it on a pole. Actually, let's read it. Numbers 21, 4-9 says this. I'm reading from the NIV. They traveled from Mount Hor along the route to the Red Sea to go around Edom. But the people grew impatient on the way. They spoke against God and against Moses and said, "Why have you brought us out of Egypt to die in the wilderness? There is no bread. There is no water. And we detest this miserable food." Don't talk, Matt. Then the Lord sent venomous snakes among them. Like, it seems like an overreaction to me, but God knows much better than me. It says, the Lord sent venomous snakes among them. They bit the people and many Israelites died. See, this was a big point. Like, God was trying to make a point about people backbiting and moaning and rebelling against God and people who had put in place to lead them. It was such a big deal. It was like, some people are going to have to die. And we struggle to weigh that up in our spirit sometimes. But it says then, the people came to Moses and said, "We sinned when we spoke against the Lord and against you. Pray that the Lord will take the snakes away from us." Check that out. They're repenting. They're saying we were wrong. We shouldn't have done that. And so they prayed, take the snakes away. Ask God, we're praying, take the snakes away from us. So Moses prayed for the people. But it says in verse 8, the Lord said to Moses, "Make a snake and put it on a pole. Anyone who is bitten can look at it and live." So Moses made a bronze snake and put it on a pole. Then when anyone was bitten by a snake and looked at the bronze snake, they lived. They were healed. They wouldn't have died from the venom. This is such a weird story. This is such a weird, because usually in Scripture, but like, we prayed to God and he went, "Okay, I'll take that away. I won't make that happen." But instead he said, "Nope." Like a stubborn dad, "Nope, you will learn. In fact, I'm going to make you live amongst the things that you now fear." Nearly all normal humans are scared of snakes for good reason. And so this population of people were now in real fear of snakes because many people they knew had died. Like, some of you might like handling grass snakes and go to petting zoos and things, and you're not scared of snakes. If you've lived in the desert for quite a few weeks, months, and many people you loved have died of a snake bite, all of a sudden you might have a little bit of a thing about snakes. So even if you don't now, you probably would in this context. And so this community was scared of snakes. They were fearful. And God said, "I'm not going to remove the thing that you're terrified of, that I even put there. What I'm going to do is I'm going to put it up on a pole for you. A bronze snake for you to come and a reminder of the thing you're afraid of. And I'm going to put it up nice and high for you. If you're bitten, come and look at the thing that you're scared of. The thing that has just attacked you." The Israelites were told to look at the very thing they feared. To look at the thing that they feared. Like I said, God didn't remove the thing that they were afraid of. But he made them confront it. He made them, it was like this, the only way out of this. I love this about God. He's like, the only way out of this cycle of fear is to confront it. If you don't and you allow it to bite you, you're going to die. I'm not taking them away. The thing's not going away. That thing you fear in your life isn't going away anywhere. It will just stay there. And you can hide in the camp. You can get bitten by it over and over again. If you're not going to face it, you'll die. But if you'll come, even when it bites you, and come and look it in the face, then you will live, that you will be healed. Stare at it. Look at it. Face it. See, this really is probably the earliest example written down, I think, anyway, but definitely in the Bible, of exposure therapy. This is what this is. This is like modern exposure therapy we've rebranded it now and called it that, but this is what it is. A psychological technique of just like giving you a little bit of the thing that you're terrified of, to confront it over time, confronting a fear directly, whatever that's you're scared of. If you're scared of a spider, you might think, some people put themselves out there and try and hold spider. But to start with, they don't just go, "Oh, I'll have a cuddle with a spider." They just have to be in a room where there is a spider, maybe for a few weeks, and just face the thing. And then the next week, maybe, like if people have got crippling fears, this ought to be the next week, you're just one step closer to it, and that's it. Next week, maybe touching the outside of a cage that it's in that it can't get out of. This exposure therapy of getting closer and closer and facing the thing that we're fearful of. Bring out the peacock. You see, growth comes not from avoiding fear, but from staring it in the face. It comes from not avoiding it, but staring it in the face. And I have got actually a long story I want to tell you now. And some of you might have heard it before, actually, if you've been around for many years. And it will take me a while to get through it, but it reinforces the point heavily. But I remember when I was in high school, so I would have been 15, 16 maybe at this point, and I was probably about the size I am now. I was a big lump in high school, and I was quite a tough kid as well. So out of my year group, I was probably considered like the hard kid. You know, there's always that one at the top. But I was nice. So I didn't beat people up. I liked interjecting with fights, you know, splitting fights up. I was prefect. Do they still have prefects in high school? In fact, I was head prefect. And so I was no other person wanted to do it in my school. My school was appalling. I think the teacher said, we need some prefects, Phil. I know you'll say yes because you're very helpful. So please, because I was a nice kid. I don't know what happened. But I never had a proper fight through primary school, middle school, and high school. Never had a proper fight. And probably because most of the people around me were terrified of me and I wasn't aware of it. You know, it's like, be my friend, okay. But I'd never been in a fight at all, but I didn't fear fighting, but I did avoid it. Like, I've always been someone who thought, you know, use your words. Like, that's what I used to say to Joel when he was little, when he was frustrated and, like, beating things up. It's like, use your words. I always think that's a better way of dealing with things. I always avoided fights if I could growing up, in and outside of school. But I was a tough kid. I played rugby from a very young age, from, like, the age of 9 or 10, and they moved me up 2 age groups because I was hurting the kids in my own age group because I was so big and strong for my age. And so I was tough, I was rough. And so, in fact, I used to hurt people by accident. Like, in fact, I remember when I was in an MMA sparring session with somebody and I hurt 2 people, but not the people I was fighting, the people behind me that I'd accidentally bumped into because I'm just like a bull in a china shop. But I'm like a clumsy kung fu panda. I do like noodle soup. But, what my point is, I didn't fear the fight. I didn't fear fight or confrontation. But I did fear, if I'm honest, when I reflect back, it'd still be the same today, I really fear hurting somebody. Like, because I don't like people getting hurt, like properly injured. I fear hurting somebody else properly. Even in rugby, I'd want them to feel a bit of pain so they knew I'd beat them in a scrum. But I didn't ever want to injure them or hurt them. And so I did fear hurting somebody if I lost my cool, because I was stronger than most people. So I did fear, honestly, some of you don't sort of connect with that at all, but it was wired in me. But more so, and this is the bigger one by far, by orders of magnitude, I was fearful of the trouble that I'd get in afterwards with a fight. Anyone met my mum? She's like Yoda, and she's like Yoda. I was terrified of my mum. Scary Nanny Linda? Scary Nanny Linda. Joel's terrified of Nanny Linda. She's just like a ball of fuss, like a poodle that could kill you. But I was terrified of my mum. But I was also a kid that was a nice kid in school that really didn't like getting in trouble with authority. Or my dad was a policeman. I didn't really see my dad growing up. But I was I was fearful and reverent of authority as well. And I was like, I didn't ever want to be in trouble. And so I feared those 2 things, of maybe hurting someone and fear of being in trouble for doing so. And when I think back, the only time I can recall strong fear that didn't last just a few minutes started at a school disco. And I have told this story before, where I was head prefect. I organised a school disco to raise money for a girl who needed a wheelchair in our year. And but we were short of staff. The staff didn't want to come out. So we had like 2 or 3 staff members that would come for hundreds of people. And so they asked me, as the big dude who's the prefect, to go on the back fire door and say, can you cover the back fire door to stop anyone sneaking in and not paying and all that sort of stuff? And they thought, people wouldn't buy a ticket and then their mates would let them in. And so I thought, yeah, that's cool, it's not a problem. But a pupil opened the back door for someone who was a much older kid to let them in, who wasn't part of the school. In fact, I think they'd been expelled when they were in the school years ago. And it was dark outside, and I caught this kid trying to do it, and his friend started walking towards the door to come in, and I got the door, and I said, "Sorry, mate, I've got to close. I can't let you in. You're not, one, you haven't bought a ticket, but you're a little bit old to come to a high school dance, It's a bit strange." And so I went to close the door, and this guy said, "I'm going to smash your face in." And I was like, "Oh, that's not good, is it?" And so I was like, "Oh, whatever." And I just, because he was a few meters away, I just closed the door, shut the door, and I was cool. And I thought, "Oh, he's outside, it's no bother." And I'm not scared of a fight, but I went to the front exit to inform the teacher, just because there were two teachers on the front, to say, just so you know, someone's trying to get in who shouldn't be here. So I just thought, I'm a grass, I'd just inform the teacher. But I come out the front, and there was like 20 dudes who are much older than the school kids that were in. I don't know how, some of them must have been in their 30s, but maybe it's because I was so young and they were probably mid-20s. So probably they seemed really old to me. But there was like 20 dudes all out the front, like all getting a bit shirty. And I was like, "Oh no, this doesn't look good." Someone had even pulled up like a Harley, it wasn't a Harley, but a Harley Davidson bike up onto like right in front of the door. And there was a guy stood there as well with a knuckle duster on. So there's all these guys, and I've come out and gone, "What's going on here?" And the teachers were just like, "You're not allowed in, boys," and they were trying to have a conversation. Meanwhile, this lad who just told me he was going to smash my face and come around the corner and went, "There he is!" And he started running towards the door, and I was like, I didn't know if this dude was with these guys. I didn't know him. I was like, "Oh, this is not going to go well." And my teachers panicked and were like, "Get inside, get inside." They shut the doors. And I was a little bit on the scared side, because there was a lot of people, and he was targeting me to come and have a problem with, and there's lots of older, bigger guys and knuckle dusters and stuff, and I'm like, I'm just trying to organise a disco. But I thought, it's going to kick off. So my teachers told me to get inside, just stay inside. In fact, go back on that back door. We don't want people getting in. You need to definitely be on that door now. And so like for the next 15 or 20 minutes, I was on that back door. Like any kid coming near it, I was like pushing them in the face, like, "You need to go away. You don't want to open this off." But for the next 15 or 20 minutes, there was reports coming in that people were on the roof of the building and trying to get in. And I went into fear mode. Maybe some of you wouldn't. Maybe some of you would have been in fear mode straight away when someone told you they're going to smash your face in. I wasn't. It was to the point I'm like, 20 people are going to try and get in here and beat the living hell out of me. And, in my head, it was like, quite a few dudes. Well, I'm outnumbered heavily. And I remember, my mind was going fast. If you've ever been scared and your mind's running like 100 miles an hour and it's going through all the scenarios, that's what mine does anyway. And I was thinking, if I'm not going to get beaten up, if I'm not going to get torn to shred or stamped all over, I'm going to have to fight back. Like, if I just let them, I'm going to get maybe killed. I don't know. Like, these are the things going through my head. So I'm going to have to fight back. I'm going to have to fight back without restraint. If there's that many people, I'm going to have to get in a corner and just fight with no restraint. and actually, even in my head, thinking, I'm actually going to have to really hurt people to stop them. I'm going to have to really hurt people to stop them trying to come after me. And so I was in this sort of panic mode. But you've got to remember, I hate really hurting people. So I'm in this position where I'm going to have to do something that I really don't want to do. And then I was crippled as well with the possible ramifications. If I were to fight back and hurt people seriously, like, I'm going to be in trouble. And some of you might think, no, they wouldn't, because if you've been attacked, you can defend yourself. My brain wasn't thinking that. My mum's going to tell me off. But to the point, I was getting to the point where I was shaking. Like ready to fight, ready to run. But really what I wanted to do was hide. What I wanted to do was play dead in the corner. And eventually, after about 20 minutes of me shaking and sweating profusely, I managed to convince the DJ, he had a backup DJ friend who was doing stuff to drive me home. So we waited, and I snuck out the fire door, and I ran. And then they were out the front still, I think. Well, we didn't know where they were, so I actually hid under coats in the back of the car to be able to drive past to get out. And so I ran and I hid. Big tough guy. But for months, and it was months, I was in constant fear. I lived in constant fear. Every moment of being out of my own house. I was in constant fear that I'd see this lad in the daytime somewhere, because it was obviously at night, but I'd be out somewhere and I'd see him. Because he now knew me, and I hate to say this about myself, I'm not very good with faces, but I'd etched his into my mind, and so I could see it all the time. But he knew my face, and in my mind it was like, I'm gonna have, if he sees me, I'm gonna have to fight him. Where before I've always thought I can diffuse situations, but and I was fearful more of the outcome of having to do that. I was thinking maybe he's quite a tough kid, maybe he is, because if he's threatening to smash people's face and he's used to fighting, I was like, maybe he's a tough kid, I'm going to have to hurt him to stop him. And I lived in that sort of fearful scenario all the time. But a few months later, I saw this lad, and it was in the daytime, middle of the day, not at night. And it was in town. Anyone know near the old Argos building, there's Button Island Bridge, three-way metal bridge that leads up. And I got to this three-way bridge, and I was coming up one way. I was right at the bottom of one bit, and he was coming up one of the other strands of it, and there was another boy at the top that I thought was with him. And so I saw them, and I was like, okay. He hadn't yet seen me, so he was looking at his mate, and I was at the bottom, and I was like, he hasn't seen me yet. I can run. Or I can hide, I can just turn around and sneak in the opposite direction, and they wouldn't even know I was there. But I didn't. I had a choice. I thought, I'm gonna face it. Let's do it now. Let's just do it. I could have snuck away, but I thought I had a choice, but I voluntarily decided to face it. And so I faced it voluntarily. I walked out. I thought, all right, here we go. Let's do this. And so as I got closer, I was walking out. It's like a 10-meter bit of ramp. And I thought, in my head, as I got closer, I thought, you know what I'm going to do? 2-on-1, quite like them odds. Because 20 versus 1, don't like them odds. 2v1, quite like them odds. So I had a plan in my head. Right, pick him up, throw him over the rail into the river. This is not suggestions, young people. But in my head, I was like, throw him into the river, 1-on-1. I really like those odds. And so that was what was going through my head. I was building up to this moment. And it's funny because I walked towards him. He didn't even notice me. I don't think he even recognised me. But what he did do was say to this other lad, I'm going to smash your face in, or something along them lines. So he'd obviously had a bit of beef with this other fella. And so I walked up and I just watched them have a fight. And honestly, I just stood there. I was like, am I waiting for is this like take a ticket? So I just watched, and I sort of was doing the whole sort of moving away slowly, because I shouldn't just stand and watch, because that seems a bit mean. But I was just edging away, and I watched these two fight. And for about 30 seconds, they had this little scuffle. And I got the popcorn out, and I was like, this is interesting. When I realised this dude is soft. I was like, he can't fight. Neither of these guys can fight. I'm like, this dude is soft. And in fact, I think Ava could have taken him, Joel. Ava could have taken this dude. And but the scales fell from my eyes. And after seeing him face to face in daylight, I was now much braver. I was healed of that fear that crippled. And they stopped tickling each other for 30 seconds. And one of them walked off, I think, with a bloody nose, and he walked back past me, and I just stood there, literally a metre away, face to face with him, as he walked past, and I just smiled at him as he walked past. He didn't have a clue who I was, but I smiled I think he said, what are you smiling at? And I just carried on smiling. This really annoying smile that I do to you sometimes? But I smiled at him knowing I don't need to fear the fight, for one, because I don't really fear fighting anyway. I don't need to fear the fight, but I don't need to fear the outcome if I did have a fight with you, because you're so soft. I could cuddle you like you were a puppy and stop you trying to hurt me and be like, when you're fighting with your kids and they can't do anything. I'm like, this is what this would be like. So all this fear had gone from me completely, but it took me being willing to face it. I know that's a really long story To give an example of having them moments, you'll have these moments in your life when you get to the bottom of Button Island Bridge and you get a choice to face the fear. Just like the Israelites, they had the choice. I've been bitten. What am I going to do about that? I'm going to go and stare in the face something I'm actually terrified of facing. See, my point was growth comes not from avoiding fear, but from staring it in the face. And what happens when we do that is we realize it doesn't have the power that we thought it had. Nearly always. And so I've got a question for you to reflect upon is, what is the snake in your life that God is asking you to face? What is that snake that's in your life that God's asking you to face? You see, fear isn't a sign of weakness. It's a normal human response. The question isn't do you feel fear? It's what do you do with it when you do feel it? And there's lots of biblical examples that we can go into. When Gideon was asked to lead the army, he felt inadequate. He felt terrified, yet he followed God's lead to army. Esther would have felt fear when she risked her life to save her people. Even Peter, when we read in Matthew 14, where he walked on the water, there would have been moments, I know he sank in the end, like at the end of that story, but there would have been moments of fear leading up to that. Any one of us would have been in that situation, but he made a decision to take a step out in faith anyway. So whatever the thing is in your life, or things, whether it's a difficult conversation, or you're scared of new opportunity, or you're fearful of a deep wound from the past, or difficult conversation, growth requires us to choose bravery over comfort. You see, exposure therapy, when you look at it, and especially with the Israelites too, doesn't make you less fearful. That's what people think. They think, I go and I deal with it and I'm not afraid anymore. It's not. You still have exactly the same amount of fear. You just become braver. You just have, like God would say to many people, have courage. That means you're terrified, but have courage to do the thing anyway, despite the fact you are terrified. When you think about it, Jesus was the ultimate example of facing fear. He was on the verge of facing torture. He was of betrayal of friends, of being rejected by all. Even a separation from God in some regard, feeling abandoned, why have you forsaken me, God? He knew all this was coming. He knew his mother was going to watch him be beaten within an inch of his life. He knew he was going to get punishment for no wrongdoing. Not even no wrongdoing, even worse, for doing right. He was going to be punished for doing right. He was going to be hoisted up half naked on a pole. For some of us, that would be like just that thing alone. Being half naked in a loincloth on a pole in front of people would have been terrifying. He was going to be shamed. He was going to be judged and slowly put to death. The Passion story is the ultimate human tragedy. It's like all of our human fears, all the worst ones, all put together into one story. And he knew it was coming. He knew it was coming. It wasn't just a fear of a potential, an anxiety, a worry about what might happen. He knew it was coming. In the Garden of Gethsemane in Matthew 26, where Jesus, who was fully God and fully human, was deeply distressed, as he faced the cross. But he prayed this, my soul, check this, my soul is overwhelmed with sorrow to the point of death. My soul is overwhelmed with sorrow to the point of death. And yet he still walked face first into his purpose and demonstrated, I think, facing fear doesn't mean we won't feel it. See, Jesus felt it. Jesus was like, we might use different words, anxious, worried, fearful, all that bundle of sorrowful, his soul being so weighed down. We thought Jesus had to pray, and now it's all right. Now he's like, oh, your will be done. And he's like, let's go. No, he would have felt the weight of that, but chose to face it anyway. In fact, he said, I like this, he said to his disciples, rise, let's go. Here comes my betrayer. He faced his betrayer. He's like, here's my betrayer, and here are all the people who are going to kill me. I'm actually going to voluntarily walk towards them. He didn't say, right, like most of us would have done, sat on the floor and say, you're going to have to take me. No, he said, right, I'm going to actually walk towards them voluntarily, facing his fears, staring them in the face. You see, the cross itself becomes a symbol of victory over fear, not by avoiding it, but by confronting it and overcoming it, by facing it. So, as we finish, I want to ask, what is the fear God's asking you to confront today? Because, my bottom line, to overcome your fear, you must first stare it in the the face. To overcome your fear, whatever that might be, you first have to stare it in the face. And so my challenge this week is to ask yourself, what fear do you need to face? And what step can you take toward confronting it this week? What step can you take to getting closer to staring it in the face? Because fear doesn't have to paralyze you. You look at Jesus, who faced the ultimate fear. Amen. Let's pray. Father, I just thank you.